Okay, so first of all, we want to say thank you so much for your time today, and also for letting us watch this movie before Fantastic Fest. Okay, I'm not going to speak for Alma, but I absolutely loved this movie, and I can't wait to start talking about it. But real quick, I wanted to introduce ourselves. I'm Dalia.
I'm Alma.
And we actually host a horror movie podcast. So I know your movie's not horror, but we love these kind of genre bending kind of movies. And this was right up our alley when we read the description. We're like, yeah, we want to discuss this.
Thank you, Dalia and Alma. I really appreciate you watching it and wanting to talk about it. That means the world to me.
So the movie is described as an uptight dwarf and his free-spirited alien-obsessed neighbor hit the road on a border-defying search for their place in the universe. But it's like, always with these taglines, it's always so short and you want to try to grab the people and everything. But there's a lot going on here. And it's like, with the characters, with your ambiguous ending, which we can't wait to discuss, and everything. What exactly was it about the movie you feel like the story you wanted to tell? I guess if you could, just like in a simple, little.
I love movies that are unexpected. By the way, I love horror movies, and like the ones that I love the most usually are the ones that are surprising in ways that I haven't seen before. And as a storyteller and as a filmmaker, there's a sense of plasticity to cinema that no other art form has, which you can do whatever you want. You can bend the rules, you can dive into any direction, and you can take the audience emotions and like their attention and their suspension of disbelief to like places that are not necessarily like, that's why that's the genre aspect and the genre bending aspect of. So I wouldn't say, oh, I make dramas or I make comedies or I make sci-fi movies, because I think especially the movies that I love the most tend to have all those elements. Like the movies that I love the most make me laugh, and they make me feel like cringe on my seat and make me very scared. So even though, Unidentified Objects is not quite a horror film, even I do still think it has scenes that are a little bit nightmarish in their own ways. Like let's say like that alien cop scene, or for example the bar scene. Even though it's not horror, like you're gory and like, you know what I mean. But so yeah, I feel like I accomplished. I think it comes. The screenplay was developed by my buddy Leland and myself. We developed it together during COVID. And in some ways, I think it was a response to everything that was like the world crashing, and it's kind of like making a movie about two strangers getting the road and like escaping reality or escaping our lives for a second, and in that process realizing and learning more about who we are. That's kind of like at its core. Leland and I were unemployed, financially struggling, like during that time the screenplay was developing, and so a lot of that is in there, and I think that spirit is carried throughout the film, like that hopelessness or like that lack of existence in some ways. That but at the end of the day, yeah, I feel very happy, and I think I did the movie. Also, I think at the end of the day, the movies that I like are character based, and I think for me that was probably like the most important thing. So casting, finding Matthew, finding Sarah to play Winona and Peter was like one of the biggest. Like once that clicked. And I know the moment it clicked, I was like, okay, we have a movie on our hands. No matter where this goes, it's at the end of the day about watching these two pair, like going at each other and discovering themselves.
Mm-hmm. I can see it a lot. I think that the way we describe it is kind of genre bending, that so many people would be interested in this story because we were all in that pandemic situation. We were all in that our little world, afraid to step out. And so you can see that on the screen. And I think that those two characters were really somebody that anybody could put themselves in their shoes. We were discussing also where you were from. And and I'm from Colombia. And we wanted to know do you have family, or were you interested at all in maybe doing a movie back there?
Yes. So I have good news. I'm from Medellin, Colombia, born and raised. I go to Colombia every year pretty often. In fact, this year is the first year I hadn't worked there. I shot a commercial for a brand called Jeff, which is a fashion brand, and I just shot 2 music videos for Maluma in Colombia a week and a half ago, which is a big artist from there. So right now and the answer is yes. I have a screenplay called We Were Born Dead, Nacimos Muertos. It's going to be a Spanish-speaking psychological thriller about 2 kids living in rural Colombia in the middle of nowhere who one day their mom doesn't come home. And it becomes a similar, like Unidentified Objects, a genre-bending story, coming of age. We're very much inspired in Guillermo del Toro Spanish Civil War films, like Guillermo, like Pan's Labyrinth or The Devil's Backbone. Very much of that anything is possible because we're seeing the world through the eyes of kids, and there's no real limitations to that because there's no, you know what I mean? A lot of the barriers in the way we think are set by society, but a child doesn't have that. So that's kind of like my hopefully I shoot that movie next year, and hopefully we'll talk about it in the year.
Oh yeah. That's exciting. We love it. We love it when we find a lot of films that are a Spanish language because also because you're drawing in such a wider audience. And that's really exciting because we're always looking for also foreign films and other language films so that we could share with more people, like the people who are just seeing American cinema, so that they can open their eyes more to the fact that there's so many more movies out there, independent films, foreign language films. We saw in your bio that you went to NYU Tisch. My daughter, I just dropped my daughter off to start her fall semester there.
First year.
And the first year.
Congrats.
Yes. And how did you end up there and just put you on that path to be behind the camera, the director path?
Great question. So for me, it was a little bit of a longer journey to get to NYU. So I graduated high school in Medellin. And my brother lived in LA, and my parents were able to like through, you know how immigrants is, after like many years of paperwork and stuff, they were able to get me a green card because my sister was born in the US in '83. So I moved to LA to hustle and work and learn. And I started like working in independent sets. I started taking classes at a community college called Santa Monica College. I live with my brother. I'm working, I'm producing and directing little short films. I think that's very important. It's like I started making my own films from a very young age, and a lot of them were very bad, but that's how you start growing. And in that process, I actually played soccer very well, as you can see, like kid from Medellin. I would run a lot, and I would play. And they like 2 executives from Paramount Pictures saw me play. No, an entertainment lawyer saw me play, and they invited me to play on their soccer team. And there were a bunch of executives from Paramount there. So I joined their team. We became friends, and eventually they offered me an internship, working for them. And I started reading a lot of scripts when I was doing coverage. You know, like reading, like writing about the script, recommending it, and answering phone calls. It was tough because my English wasn't as good back then, so I was kind of in the process of figuring a lot of stuff out consistently. And I probably wouldn't have gotten that job if it wasn't for my soccer skills. And my buddy Leland, who's the main writer of Unidentified Objects, is my creative writer. Actually, he had a screenplay there. And since he was 17, he's a brilliant writer, and he had a screenplay at that office that they were considering optioning, or maybe they had option. And I read it, and I remember seeing like this writer it's like I gotta work with him. I really admire him. And they told me, oh yeah, it's a kid. He's like your age. And I couldn't believe it. So eventually, after like 2 years in LA, I had a little bit of credits at Santa Monica College. And I knew, okay, I want to go to film school. So I applied to NYU and I got in, and I was so excited. And then I moved to New York, and in New York, same. I started working for a YouTuber called Casey Neistat. I started working at his office, being like he would pay me, I think $10 an hour, but he would tell me work as many hours as you want. And I was like, be there at 6 a.m. cleaning the floors just to rack up a little bit of money. And eventually a kid from UCLA transferred to NYU. And he and I became really good friends. And then one day I asked him, "Hey, do you know this kid called Leland? He's from UCLA." And he said, "Oh yeah, he's my good friend." And I said, "Can you put me in touch with him? I want to work with him. I really admire his work." So he connected us, and that was like 2015. And Leland and I have been working together ever since. And in terms of how to become a director, to be honest, there's no, like for me in my personal journey, it's always been about putting the work. So like I like making little short films and then making another one and then trying to just trying to keep never stop. You know what I mean? Like never stop. But like I think that momentum is everything, and like that is not only the way you grow and you become better as a storyteller, but it's also the way you can prove people that you can actually do this and get people to finance your film or get people. I'm also I won Lilian and I this Spanish-speaking script that I told you about. We won the Richard Vake Production Fund, which is a grant from NYU for students that graduate, alumni who graduated in the past 5 years of NYU. So we won it on 2019, right before COVID, and they gave us they gave us 50,000. It's not a lot of money, but it's something, and it's really hard to get. So we have it there, and I guess that's kind of where the journey has been so far, and I'm still like learning and still like, going through it.
I absolutely love that it's not a straightforward journey. And it's that immigrant hustle that we all know, like we saw our mom doing it, and then you're doing it, and it's good to be continued to be the
you can
story
see
of people doing that. And that soccer was the intro. It's just like so different. It's just like, yeah.
100%.
You have a wealth of like experience is what I was trying to say. You have like this whole, like from the ground floor, when you see good writing, you see good stories, it usually comes from somewhere. And from you speaking and telling your story, you can see that that's where you're drawing from. You can see the hard work and the passion because it grew from somewhere.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Alma. And by the way, like I wouldn't be qualified to have that internship. A lot of the kids they brought there were like USC, Harvard, and like Ivy League schools. That's it. I would never in my entire life gotten an internship there if it wasn't for soccer, which is like the funny thing about life.
Yeah.
It's how you end up in places and you navigate the system and the world.
Oh yeah, well, it kind of reminds me of one of the lines in the movie where you say, but we wanted to discuss that in a little bit, but with Winona when she's discussing when she's a sex worker, and she's like, well, that's just a thing that I do. It's just one part of her, of who she is. It's not the entirety. So like with you mentioned how there were these people from these USC or wherever, but you have all these little stories to tell inside of you, and that's what they saw. And then maybe it was the soccer that kind of made you stand out for that moment, but then it's you that is earning these grants and everything else and being given the opportunities. It's so awesome. But so we read a statement that you wrote about the movie where you mentioned that you wanted to tell the story of a person or a group of people that were underrepresented or not often cast as the lead, and you decided to choose someone with dwarfism. The actor that you chose was Matthew Jeffers. And so I'm curious I'm sure that was very challenging. I don't know if you know anybody with dwarfism or not, but tackling such a unique perspective and trying to be sensitive, but at the same time not dismissive of how you tell their story, that must have been hard to navigate, I'm thinking.
Yes, it was. I think I think it comes from a cinema study classes and stuff like that. It's like realizing that representation in cinema, and it's a lot of work. It's starting to grow. In the past 10 years there's been massive change, and that's huge. But like most little person characters, except Peter Dinklage, are casted as freaks, even in 2021 and 2022. Like they are casted as like your typical, literally like little monster in the corner kind of vibe. Like, and I mean, obviously there's exceptions here and there, but I thought it was fascinating to explore a character who was self-aware of all of that, and someone that self-awareness comes through the script and through the character exploration. And when it comes to casting, there's no doubt, and I knew in my heart, there wasn't a doubt that there was gonna be a massive pool of incredibly talented little people, actors there who were just looking for the right opportunity. And not saying that obviously, not that I'm bringing the opportunity, but I just thought I want to make them my collaborators. I want to find the right person who can help us shape this story. Because at the end of the day, for me, it's like I'm not the kind of director that is obsessed. Oh, I have to be the actor that has to write the script and it has to be based on my like childhood trauma. Not necessarily. For me, it's more than that. We all go through. Everybody has their own life. Everybody has their own struggles. It just. But so casting, in some ways, it became not only casting the lead actor of our movie, but also casting the imagination of a human being who was going to complement our creative and was going to be part of our producing team in some ways. And that was exactly who Matthew is. And once we found him, we were incredibly lucky. We did audition pretty much every little person in the world. Like we auditioned South Africa, Australia, like England, a lot of little people in New York, in LA. We went to all the little people or like diverse, disability agencies, talent agencies, pretty much in the world. We did our work. We put a lot of work. Once Matthew came on board, we kind of rewrote the script with him. Like he gave us permission to tell the story in the right way, and he he gave us permission to say the word midget when in the bar scene when that happens, or etc. Like really understanding what the story is coming from a person like him, but also understanding why we're telling the story and why in the first place we decided to tell it. And I think a little person in some ways obviously has its own experience, but like as you say, like as an immigrant, I have my own experiences. I'm not just a kid who went to community college from Medellin. That's just one thing. We're so many more things than just the sex worker. So I think what he represents and what he means, it's universal. It's relatable to every human being, and especially those who don't come from like your status quo, like your traditional like New York City, like Upper East Side kid. You know what I mean? But so that's kind of a little bit of that. And now Matthew's one of my best friends. I love it, and we share the same birthday as
well. Okay, when's that?
July 31st.
Okay. Hey,
that's my husband's birthday. That's my husband's birthday.
Oh, that's crazy.
And mine's on the 20th. But you're answering so many questions with the way you said that, because I was going to specifically ask about did you do research? But it seems like you and your creative team, you were very open to talking and asking questions from the people and realizing that this is not just a character. This is a human being portrayed on screen. Mm-hmm. And I really like what you said, that you spoke and acted and then kind of rewrote the character around their personal, their answers, their experience. And because seeing that the two of them, it was very moving. I'm not sure if Dali has another question specifically about Matthew Jeffers' character, but I was so moved with how in tune that these two people were represented on screen. Like they weren't just written. It was like somebody took the time to understand, to empathize, to put themselves in the shoes of these two characters. I absolutely loved the Winona character. Dahlia already fantastic. Brought up.
Yeah, I love her.
Yes, and it was the unique perspective of how she specifically stated in the movie that this is just something that I do. Did you do research? Did you speak to sometimes? And this is no offense, but writing a woman character as men don't really, you can tell. And right. This woman, I was just like somebody I could talk to every day, somebody that I might know. Was there research specifically?
A lot of research, and also it comes from the casting too. Like, who do we want to bring to embody this character? And we actually, for Winona character, we were looking for actual sex workers. One, because they could bring an experience that not even a normal woman could relate to. But in particularly Sarah Hay, even though she didn't play a sex worker, she is a ballerina at a very high level. And ballerinas at that level have been exploited for their bodies and their shape, the shape of their feet, and like if they have boobs or they don't have boobs. But Sarah Hay in particular was a ballerina who had big breasts, and she wasn't doing well in the U.S. ballet precisely because of that, even though her level was super high. So she was in the Berlin ballet, the main ballet at Berlin, and as a ballerina in the company there, and she has so much to build from the misery that brought her, because of like the way she's looked on and look as almost as an object, right? So in some ways, and that came from the research, that came from doing the homework and seeing who is the right person, the right partner. And at the end of the day, it comes down to specificity, and that's why I almost didn't get Winona, because I didn't want to just, like, she's a bigger actress. She's in a star show called Flesh and Bone. She's a Golden Globe nominee actress. So it was for a movie like ours, which were small. Usually you just have to send an offer and hope she accepts. But in this movie in particular, we had to I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to really be able to know her and see how she thought. And once we were able to do that and do a chemistry read with Matthew, I have that in Zoom. That is when it clicked. That is where I was like, wow, she is it. And then after that, it becomes conversation after conversation of really understanding. And same thing is her, you have, at the end of the day, the actors are collaborators, and you have to partner with them, and they're gonna add so much value.
And speaking to what Alma said, as far as it being relatable as a woman, and you can really see it when the encounter at the gas station, when those two guys come up to her, hey, are you this person? So she's confronted with her sex work outside of the actual, working aspect of it. And it's like you said, we can totally see that when, I won't speak for Alma, but when, if I go out in public and, there's times where you have that male gaze and you have to learn how to act in certain situations, because you can't always act defensive or aggressive. And that's what the character does here. It's like she knows how to act to survive in certain situations, even though it was just this tiny little, encounter. And that's why I think Alma really, that was a good question, as far as those nuances are something that, we know that, as women, when we go out in public or, wherever, it's those little things. And that really kind of when I see her, it's just I related too much to these two characters, even though they are so different from me. I'm not these two characters, but, I was telling Alma that, I suffer from really bad depression, and I could see myself in Peter, and I could see myself in Winona. You said something about, I'm looking for the quote specifically that you said, about being this crushing sense of loneliness that people feel, and that being an aspect of this movie. And I just felt that maybe not always, but you wanting to belong to something, maybe not necessarily a group of other people, but something. And with Winona wanting to be, go to outer space with these aliens, it sounds silly on the surface, but when you get to know her character, you start to understand why, and I'm trying not to cry, because it was very emotional that she just wants to belong to something. And for her, it was, the universe, being a part of the universe. And, what a wonderful, greater aspect of, beyond us, to belong to something so amazing. I even jokingly told my partner the other day, it's like, hey, if you can figure out a way for me, when I die, send my ashes to outer space, because I just want to belong to the universe. So it's I really, really just related a lot to little aspects of these characters. And, even though they were two very different people from myself, but I just love this movie.
Thank you so much, Dayla. And yes, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, that's when we made it. I do think there's a lot to unpack in the film. There's a lot of themes but at the end of the day, it is about that. It is about like there's an existential crisis we're all going through. It's like, what is our purpose here, and why are we here, and do we belong or do we don't belong? And we all kind of want to believe that we do mean something, and it kind of like is an exploration of like that meaning of what is the meaning and the purpose of our existence, and why are we here, and it's doing it in a very intimate way. And that's why for me the title, I struggle usually with titles of movies, but this one in particular, it was right away. We knew it was Unidentified Objects, because it kind of like, that alone is so universal, and so kind of like there's so many complexities of what an unidentified object means. So thank you for saying that, and it means the world to me that you had that response. That's at the end of the day the reason why we made it.
And I do want to say real quick that embarrassingly, it wasn't until maybe like 15 minutes before this interview that I realized unidentified objects could be like UFO, and I didn't get that. And I'm stupid for that, and I'm admitting it, but just letting you know.
It's totally cool. No. No, it's totally.
This is great. You just one last little thought. I appreciate that. I was reading an interview that you did specifically about the ending. We won't give spoilers or anything like that away, but that you were very specific in saying you made it ambiguous, that you didn't want to be specific and tell anybody what to feel at the end of the movie. I always say it a lot, but that film is an art, and it's just for us to appreciate, for us to open our eyes and have a feeling without somebody telling us how to feel about it. And I think that really closed the movie in just such a perfect way, because we are able to interpret it the way that we want, and just like Dalia, just belong to it in a way that we can like connect in whatever way makes us feel the best.
Thank you so much, Alma. I appreciate that. That's incredibly kind, and I hope your audience can enjoy it as well, and they can see it eventually as either at Fantastic Fest or when it comes out to the public. But it means the world, because they're just talking to both of you. It kind of like reinvigorates the reason why we do this, right? At the end of the day, for me, storytelling is a tool. It's kind of like to like fight that. Like if there was no storytelling, there would be no hope for society. Exactly. And I feel like that's kind of in some ways what, no matter the genre, because even horror movies, by the way, they give you. They make you existential. They may make you sometimes think about it like in deeper or different ways about your own existence. So I appreciate both of you, and thank you for the kind words.